Hey guys, we are going to get started with our dissections. Woohoo! All right, so yesterday you guys took some looked at some background information on the earthworm, so you have a general idea of some information about it before we just start cutting it up. Today I am going to go through the dissection with you. Tomorrow you'll have the second part, and then you'll kind of have like a wrap up on Thursday. Before I go any farther, your word of the day today is nephridium. There you go, nephridium. That's your word of the day. Okay, before we get started, I wanted to let you know that as you go through this, your assignment is embedded in it, and it's going to stop at certain places and ask you some information. What I would, if you're like, oh shoot, she went too fast or I missed some of that, you can hit rewatch and it'll just rewatch that segment. Okay? All right, we are going to get started with the dissection. All right, I'm going to record. Ready? 3, 2, all right, guys, remember safety first. I already have my glasses on and my gloves. Okay, here is your earthworm. Definitely not one that I found in my yard today because they are way smaller and actually crawling. This one is clearly very dead. You don't find these ones around here. Okay, a few facts before we get started. The earthworm is an invertebrate, so therefore it is lacking a backbone. It also does not have an exoskeleton, guys. A lot of you told me it does. If you were to come over here and like feel this thing, if you've ever felt a worm before, they're slimy and wiggly and they're not hard. If you were to step on it, it smushes. It doesn't crunch like a beetle would. They have a segmented body. So if you can see this, you can see the little ridges there. They have between 120 and 175 segments, and that just depends on the worm. Earthworms need to stay moist in order to breathe. So they actually breathe through their skin, which is kind of cool. They don't have lungs. Instead, they take in oxygen, like I said, through their skin, and it goes right into their blood vessels. Carbon dioxide, on the other hand, is also going to diffuse out of their body also through their skin. And if they got dried out, they're definitely going to die. So if you ever see, like after a rainstorm, some people might say like, oh, it smells like worms. It does. Worms come up when it's raining because otherwise they'll drown. And you might see some on the sidewalk or the concrete, and then it gets really sunny, the water evaporates, and that worm just wasn't fast enough. So they dry up if they are not in a moist environment. They have regenerative powers. That does not mean if you cut them in half, you have 2 worms. You have 2 pieces of a worm, but you do not have 2 worms. So it depends on where the earthworm is cut. If it is cut, see this little like bumpy thing, it kind of looks like a Band-Aid around it. If it's cut above that, it will not survive. If it's cut below that, it could survive, but the bottom half is like it's done. It's not coming back. It's not regenerating. Kind of like a starfish. If a starfish loses a limb, it can regrow that limb, but that limb that broke off, it's not coming back as a full starfish, okay? So regenerative powers, but it kind of depends on where the damage occurs. And lastly, the earthworm does not have eyes. It does not have a nose. But it does have some sensors on it. So it has light receptacles or light sensors, and it also has like touch sensors. So if you were to pick an earthworm up, you might notice that it like starts moving around and like going in the opposite direction because it can sense vibrations, which is very helpful for when it's in the ground. It has a few predators, birds being one, moles. It's one of a mole's favorite snacks. So it can sense the vibrations of the mole, and it's going to kind of like go the opposite way. It has these light sensors on them, so it can be in the dark or in the light, and it kind of knows the difference there. All right, external anatomy. The very first segment. So we're going up by this like it looks like this Band-Aid. It's a lighter color thing here. I'll tell you about that in a moment. So the top part of that, anterior to that, that is where the mouth is. So the mouth is on the very first segment. The last segment is going to contain the anus or the butthole. The coloring of the earthworm is definitely an adaptation for it, meaning that it has camouflage. It can blend into its surroundings to avoid those predators, whether it's a mole or a bird or a frog or even us if we're wanting to eat them or give them to baby sisters or brothers because we don't like them all the time. or for fishing, whatever the case may be. A third of the way down from the mouth, you have this band here. This is called the clitellum. The clitellum is a swollen section and it's smooth there. And it means that the worm is an adult and it can actually reproduce and lay eggs. There is a dark line along the dorsal side here. So along the back, there is a very dark line, and that is the dorsal blood vessel. Whereas on the ventral side, you can't really see it. The ventral means belly. You can't really see it here. It's not clear, but there's also a ventral blood vessel. On the ventral side, there are these bristle-like setae, and these setae are going to aid in movement. They're used for locomotion, and it's funny, I washed this earthworm off before I brought it over to the counter here because it smells really bad because of the chemicals that it's in, and I did not have my gloves on, and you can like feel it. It feels like a nail file or like a cat's tongue, like real like sandpapery, and that's the setae that you feel. They're bristly like little appendages, super tiny. It's not like I really can't see them. Oh, yeah, I can. They're super tiny. It's almost like gritty, like little pieces of sand. And that's going to help the worm in locomotion. It's also going to help them cling to the sides of like a hole that they might be in if a predator is after them. All right, we're going to put the earthworm in place here. So I am going to place a dissecting pin. I'm going to change my camera view so you can see kind of what's going on here. Okay, so the mouth is up here, anus is here, clitellum is here. Okay, I am going to put a hole or a pin into the mouth and a pin into the anus, or at least close to the anus here. I am now going to use my scalpel to start, but then I'm going to use my scissors to do this cut here. So about 3 centimeters posterior or below the clitellum. So here's the clitellum, about 3 centimeters, 1, 2, 3 below. I am going to insert my scalpel. And so I've made my first cut. Now I'm going to use my scissors, my very pointy scissors, and I'm going to continue this cut all the way down to the anus here. Trying to be very careful. I also have my contacts in and not my glasses, which is not always the best decision. This is definitely not an amazing dissection. On my end, like, I'm not being as careful as I should be because I already know that I punctured part of the digestive tract. Whereas I know you guys would all be excellent dissectors, and that would not be the case. Okay. So I tried to avoid cutting through the digestive tract, tried being the key word. I also was like trying not to bore you guys by letting you see my surgeon skills. How's that sound? So I am going to open up the earthworm here. I'll give you a better view in just a moment. Oh yeah, I definitely nicked the digestive tract, but that's okay because it's literally from where I cut all the way down to the anus is the same thing, the intestine. There are these little kind of like rings by each segment, and that is the thread-like structures. They're called septa, and they hold the skin to the organs below it. And I have to tear through those as I go. I'm not going to do this all the way down. Guys, it's literally the same thing all the way down. You just see the digestive tract. I will definitely attach some pictures so you have some better pictures of this than just like me kind of rushing through this. So since I cut through the digestive tract, which isn't a big deal. It's just like this hollow tube. It's all this brown stuff coming out, aka poop. And what do worms eat? Oh, they eat dirt. So basically it's just dirt here. I'm not afraid of a little dirt. Oh. Ooh, 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 ooh. Okay. Put 3 more in and then I will move on. Oh, I just ripped that open there. Okay. I think I lied and put 4 or 5 in. Okay. I'm going to try to show you this better with my... Try to show you. Put this out of the way. Alright, so mouth, clitellum, anus. You can see the digestive tract and the poop or dirt as you would there. Alright, so I'm now going to cut up from the intestine slowly and gently all the way, oh my goodness, excuse me, all the way up to the mouth. You're going to see some white globs around this region here. And I'll tell you about those very shortly, but they are a very delicate organ. So I'm going to be careful as my stomach growls and I'm dissecting. Something must be wrong with me. I'm staying right, kind of to the right of that dorsal blood vessel. Okay, this is where like all the important stuff lies. Right, oh my goodness, above the clitellum. Okay, so I'm putting some pins in so you guys can see some of this as I go. Ooh, we got some juices flowing. Okay, I'm going to show you here. Oh, I guess I shouldn't have my tools in the way. Maybe you can see, like the lines right here. These are those, what's holding the skin to the organs right here. Oh, okay. So I talked about those white globs, and you can start to see them now. Little by little. Let's hope that this cut is delicate enough that you can still see everything. So usually when I start off the dissection unit, I have everyone dissect a banana. I know that sounds super crazy, but there are reasons for that. Some of you guys, when you go to dissect something, you just take the scalpel and you're like very kind of heavy-handed. And if you're heavy-handed, you end up nicking the banana, like the actual fruit and not just the skin. So that's how I usually start off the dissection unit. Hopefully next year, some of you will take anatomy and physiology and you will have the opportunity to dissect since we did not this year. And watching me dissect is probably not nearly as fun or cool, especially to some of you who are interested in health careers. Okay, now I'm being like super, super delicate. Or gentle, I should say. Okay. Okay, you can start to see that. Those white globs. Oh, actually, how do I have a worm that doesn't really have big... Oh, I take that back. I take that back 100%. Scalpel. I'm almost through all the way to the top. Just need to separate this a little bit. That was definitely on my face. Don't wear my face mask, guys. Okay. Couple more pins, and then everything should be exposed. Oh. My scalp. So I will share a picture, like I said, with you guys. The picture, I feel like they must use like a fresh worm because it's always so much more colorful, and the specimens that are in the preservatives, they just kind of suck. But I mean, it's not like I'm gonna go out and just like kill worms. I'm not just a worm killer. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Can't wait to show you guys some of this stuff here. Of course, all the important stuff is like literally up in the anterior head region of the earthworm here. Definitely not my best dissection. Not my worst, but definitely not my best. Okay, I think I have enough exposed to show you guys some things. And I will get a probe out to show you. Okay. I have changed it a little bit here. So this here is the head region, and this is the tail region or the anus. All right, so these big white globs here, those are the seminal vesicles. I'm going to remove them right now so they are out of the way. So you can see some other underlying organs. I'm actually going to put them, oh, that's a big one there. I'm going to put them on the paper towel so that they're not like falling all over the counter because that's kind of gross, I guess. Okay. All right, so I just removed some of the seminal vesicles, which were right here. You can still see some white globs though. The seminal vesicles are used for storing sperm that is produced by the testes. The testes are often really hard to find. They are under the seminal vesicles. Same with the ovaries. Yesterday, your word of the day was hermaphrodite. A hermaphrodite is an organism that possesses both sex organs. This does not mean that they can self-fertilize, though. They still need a partner. Worms are going to be sexually mature around 1 year old, and that's when you can see the presence of the clitellum, or it looks kind of like a band-aid on the outside. This afternoon I was planting, and I found some earthworms I was going to bring in and show you, but they were really young earthworms. They did not have a clitellum like that you could see on the outside yet. So this is kind of cool. When worms are mating, because everyone wants to know, like, how do worms mate? How do they have sex? Each worm is going to receive the other worm's reproductive cells. Afterwards, the clitellum is going to secrete this tube of mucus, which is going to cover the front of the worm. So the tube of mucus receives the eggs as it passes over one worm, and the reproductive cells of the other worm as it passes over it. So fertilization is going to occur on the inside of that tube as it slips forward until it finally like slips off the anterior or the head end of the worm. It's kind of like pulling a mucus covered shirt over your head. So like as it's coming off of your head, it's already has like both sex cells inside of it, and that's where fertilization is going to occur, and it's therefore external fertilization. The tube is, this mucus tube is going to seal off, and it's going to be in the ground for about 3 to 4 weeks until those eggs hatch. All right, so I've already pointed out the dorsal blood vessel that was darker in color. The next thing there are aortic arches, and those are found right over the esophagus. So I don't have a zoom on here, but the aortic arches they're right here. I'll try this view. Maybe this will work a little bit better. The aortic arches are these brown arches. Camera. Okay, they are these brown arches right here, and there's 5 of them. They act in place of a heart. So the earthworm does not have a heart. It has these 5 aortic arches instead. They look like tiny brown specks or these strings. And yeah. The ventral blood vessel we cannot see at the moment because the digestive system is totally covering it. All right. We have talked about the worm in terms of like what it eats. And so it's a detrivore. So it's going to eat enormous amounts of soil where there are dead and decaying plants and animals. Once the food enters the worm's mouth, it's going to then move to the pharynx. The pharynx is a muscle that's going to push the food into the esophagus. From the esophagus, the food is stored in a crop. The crop is kind of like a pantry. So you store your food in your pantry before you're ready to eat it. From there, it moves to the gizzard. The gizzard, so it's kind of cool. I'll show you the gizzard. The gizzard kind of looks like a white pea. It's very hard on the outside, and there is like sand granules on the inside of it to help digest or kind of like churn up the food, kind of like what your stomach would do. The gizzard acts as the stomach. Once the food is in the gizzard, it then travels to the intestine. It's going to go from the intestine out of the worm via the anus. So the longest section of the digestive system is going to be that intestine, and that is where the food is going to be absorbed via the bloodstream, and that's how nutrients are going to get to the entire worm, similar to how our small intestine works. The worm is going to poop, or they call it castings, and it's eliminated through the anus. All right, we're going to kind of take a look here so I can show you what each of those pieces look like, and I will also, like I said, give you some other better pictures that are a little more colorful than this bland-looking worm. All right, so here is the mouth, and then this here is the pharynx, which is that muscle. You can see the aortic arches here. They are covering up the esophagus, and then this right here is the crop. The crop is where the food is stored. Remember, like I said, it's like a pantry, and then it goes into the gizzard. The gizzard is hard. It's like a cartilaginous kind of ring here, and that's, like I said, it has that sand in it, and it's going to grind up the food, aka dirt, even more, and then it'll go to the intestine. The intestine's going to absorb the nutrients. It's going to go to the bloodstream. It's going to go down the intestine and then out the anus as worm castings or poop. Just a quick review here. I'm going to actually grab a fresh worm. I shouldn't say that. I should say another worm that I have in this really gross smelling chemical preservative. And I'll review here with you very quickly. Okay, so we have some external features. This worm has a mouth, and I know that this here is the mouth because I can see the clitellum right here, not too far down. And it has the anus. It has along the top of it, or along its back, it has the dorsal blood vessel. It also has a ventral blood vessel. The belly of the worm is usually way lighter in color. So here's the ventral side. It has the setae, which are those bristle-like things used for locomotion. I wish you could feel it. Just like go touch like a nail file and you'll know exactly what it feels like. And then it also has on the outside these things called nephridium. Nephridium is your word of the day. I can't elaborate any more than that at the moment. On the inside, it has those seminal vesicles, which are currently in my paper towel. Kind of gross. It has the aortic arches. There are 5 aortic arches. It has the pharynx, which is the muscle from the mouth, connecting the mouth to the esophagus. It has the crop, the gizzard, the intestine, and the septa. The septa is, once again, what's going to hold the muscles, or not hold the muscle, hold the organs to the outside layer of skin. Those are the things that kind of had to tear their like inner circle things as I was cutting through the worm. And then there are 4 things that we need to like know really in depth about the worm, and that is how the worm is going to obtain energy, how it's going to use it, how it's going to transport it, and how it's going to excrete it. All right, so how the worm obtains energy. Guys, it eats dirt. It's going to eat the soil that contains that dead, decaying matter, hence it being a detrivore. It's going to use energy to perform all of its life's functions, even just eating, moving around, its own little locomotion, interacting with other worms, reproducing, all of that. It needs the energy to do those life functions. The energy is going to be transported via the digestive system. So, enters the mouth, goes to the pharynx, to the esophagus, to the crop, to the gizzard, to the intestine, out the anus. And finally, how does it eliminate energy? Out the anus. All right, that is all we have for the dissection. If you have questions, please make sure you stop in and see me during office hours. You can ask Ms. Jurgen as well. And I'm wearing a bird shirt because birds eat worms, and I thought that was kind of funny. Okay, guys, have a good one. And like I said, if you have questions, please reach out. Adios.